Not so long ago, it felt as if winter had declared all-out war on us. Chicago's wind chills plummeted to a bone-cracking -50 degrees, and even Texas, a state famous for its heat, was frozen solid under a thick layer of ice and snow. The entire country seemed to be caught off guard, as if nature had flipped a switch and unleashed a new kind of cold. Suddenly, the term polar vortex was everywhere, splashed across newspaper headlines, dominating TV news broadcasts, and trending on social media feeds. It became the buzzword of the season, a phrase that captured the shock and confusion of millions. Schools shut their doors, power grids buckled under the strain, and millions of people shivered in their homes as Arctic air invaded regions completely unprepared for such relentless cold. Streets emptied, families huddled together for warmth, and daily life ground to a halt. These weren't just random, isolated incidents. They were stark, unforgettable reminders that even as our planet warms, extreme cold can still strike with devastating force, disrupting lives and challenging our expectations of winter. So what's really happening here? Are our winters truly getting harsher, or is the polar vortex simply a new name for an old, familiar threat? Scientists and meteorologists have been working tirelessly to unravel the mystery. The truth is less about mythical monsters and more about the fascinating, complex science of our atmosphere. The polar vortex isn't new, but our understanding of it and how it interacts with a changing climate is evolving rapidly. Grasping the science behind the polar vortex is crucial if we want to understand how climate change is rewriting the rules of winter, making some cold snaps more intense and unpredictable than ever before. So, let's zip up our science parkas, brace ourselves against the chill, and dive deep into the heart of this wintry mystery together. We'll break down what the polar vortex really is, why it sometimes escapes its Arctic home, and how it can send waves of frigid air sweeping across continents. We'll also explore what these changes mean for all of us, how we live, how we prepare, and how we adapt to winters that are anything but predictable. Get ready, the science behind these wild, unpredictable winters is cooler, stranger, and more important than you might ever have imagined. The polar vortex isn't just a storm or a blizzard. It's a massive, spinning ring of intensely cold air, swirling high above us in the stratosphere. Imagine a colossal invisible crown encircling the top of our planet, constantly in motion, shaping the weather far below. This powerful system sits about 10 to 30 miles above the North Pole, far above the clouds we see every day, in a layer of the atmosphere where temperatures can plunge to extremes. Each winter, as the sun disappears and the Arctic plunges into darkness, the polar vortex forms and strengthens. It's powered by the sharp temperature difference between the icy Arctic and the much warmer mid-latitudes, creating a dramatic gradient that fuels its spin. When the vortex is strong, it acts like a fortress, locking Arctic air in place with winds that can roar at over 100 miles per hour, circling the pole and keeping the cold contained. This means that winters in North America and Europe are often milder, with fewer extreme cold snaps, as the icy air remains trapped far to the north. But sometimes, the vortex weakens. It can start to wobble, stretch, or even split apart, breaking down that protective barrier. When this happens, frigid Arctic air escapes and spills southward, unleashing sudden and severe cold snaps on regions that aren't prepared for such extremes, sometimes plunging cities into deep freezes overnight. That's when you hear the term polar vortex dominating the news, as meteorologists warn of record-breaking cold and unexpected winter storms. The polar vortex isn't a new phenomenon. It's been shaping our winters for centuries. But when it breaks down, its impact is felt by millions, disrupting daily life and challenging infrastructure. The real key to understanding our winter weather lies in the strength and stability of this icy crown. When it's stable, the cold stays put. When it's disrupted, the results can be dramatic and far-reaching. Disruptions can lead to dramatic weather events, blizzards, ice storms, and record lows that catch communities off guard. But why is the polar vortex wobbling and breaking down more often in recent years? What's causing these changes in its behavior? To find answers, we need to look closely at what's happening in the Arctic, where rapid changes in ice, temperature, and climate may be reshaping the very crown of our planet. The real disruptor of the polar vortex isn't just a random weather event, it's the rapidly warming Arctic, a region that's heating up more than twice as fast as the rest of the planet. This dramatic change is transforming the very dynamics of our atmosphere. As sea ice melts away, it exposes more dark ocean water, which absorbs far more heat from the sun than reflective ice ever could. This sets off a powerful feedback loop. Warmer water melts even more ice, which in turn leads to even greater heat absorption. The Arctic is caught in a cycle of accelerating warming. This relentless warming shrinks the temperature difference between the frigid Arctic and the milder mid-latitudes. That temperature gradient is what keeps the polar vortex strong and contained. As it weakens, the vortex loses its grip. Imagine the polar vortex as a powerful, fast-flowing river. When it's strong, it stays straight and contained. But as it weakens, it becomes more like a slow, meandering river, easily pushed and pulled by outside forces, or in this case, atmospheric waves. These atmospheric waves can trigger dramatic events called sudden stratospheric warmings, where the stratosphere above the pole can heat up by as much as 90 degrees Fahrenheit in just a few days. This rapid warming disrupts the vortex even further. That's the knockout punch. The polar vortex can start to wobble, stretch out of shape, or even split into two or more pieces, sending cold air spiraling away from the pole. When this happens, the jet stream, a high-altitude river of wind, gets displaced and twisted. It can dip far south, funneling frigid Arctic air deep into North America, Europe, or Asia, far from its usual home. The result? Prolonged, severe cold snaps and snowstorms in places that aren't prepared for such extreme winter weather. Cities that rarely see snow can suddenly find themselves in the grip of deep freezes and blizzards. As the Arctic continues to warm and lose ice, these polar vortex disruptions are becoming more frequent and more intense, reshaping winter weather patterns across the globe. It's a chain reaction, one that starts at the top of the world and can end up right in your backyard, affecting millions of people and ecosystems far from the Arctic itself. Let's take a closer look at how this played out in recent history and what it means for our future winters. In January 2019, a sudden stratospheric warming event split the polar vortex, sending a lobe of frigid air over North America. Chicago hit -23, with wind chills below -50, colder than parts of the Arctic. Daily life across a dozen states ground to a halt, with over 250 million Americans feeling the freeze. Scientists tracked the disruption from the stratosphere to the ground, confirming the domino effect. Arctic warming, wavy jet stream, split vortex, and a brutal cold snap. The event exposed vulnerabilities in our infrastructure and showed that even prepared regions can be overwhelmed. It was a wake-up call. The rules of winter are changing. The 2019 freeze wasn't just about cold. It was about how climate change can amplify extremes, and it wouldn't be the last time the vortex made headlines. Next, Texas would face its own Arctic nightmare. In February 2021, a split polar vortex sent Arctic air plunging all the way to Texas. Temperatures dropped to record lows, and the state's unprepared power grid collapsed. Millions lost electricity and water, pipes burst, and the humanitarian toll was staggering. Over 200 people died, and the damage ran into the billions. The Texas freeze showed how a single polar vortex disruption can become a full-blown crisis when it hits a vulnerable system. No region is immune. Climate extremes can strike anywhere. The event sparked urgent debates about grid reliability and climate adaptation. The lesson: the wilding of the polar vortex has real life-and-death consequences. Are polar vortex disruptions really becoming more common, or are we just paying more attention? Some scientists say Arctic warming is clearly making the vortex weaker and more prone to breakdowns. Others caution that our data is limited. Satellite records only go back about 40 years. The term polar vortex only became popular recently. Before that, these events were just called Arctic outbreaks. It's possible we're seeing more extremes, but it's also possible we're just noticing them more. The debate is healthy. Science thrives on questions and new data. What's clear is that the climate system is complex, and untangling natural variability from human-driven change isn't easy. But the puzzle is too important to ignore. Despite debate over frequency, most scientists agree climate change is loading the dice for more extreme winters. The Arctic is warming faster than anywhere else, weakening the jet stream and making it wavier. This instability allows cold air to plunge south and warm air to surge north, creating wild swings in winter weather. The link between sea ice loss and specific cold snaps is debated, but the trend toward a more erratic jet stream is widely accepted. Global warming doesn't mean every winter is warmer. It means more instability and extremes. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change agrees. Arctic warming is influencing mid-latitude weather. The consensus isn't that every winter will be brutal, but that the odds of wild, unpredictable winters are rising. The dice are being loaded for more surprises. Understanding this helps explain why we can have record cold in a warming world. Instability, not just heat, is the new normal. As of December 2025, forecasters are watching for signs of another wild winter. Early indicators, like heavy Siberian snow and a weak La Niña, suggest a higher risk of Arctic air outbreaks in the US and Europe. This doesn't guarantee a repeat of 2019 or 2021, but it means being prepared is more important than ever. For the North, expect at least 1 or 2 major cold snaps. For the South, remember that even one extreme event can be devastating. These are probabilities, not certainties. The atmosphere is chaotic. But scientific forecasts are our best tool for staying ready. The dice might be loaded for a wobbly vortex this year. Stay vigilant and respect the power of winter. The polar vortex isn't a monster. It's a vital part of our climate system, but it's being thrown off balance by a warming Arctic. When it breaks down, it can unleash frigid air on regions unprepared for it, as we've seen in Chicago and Texas. This isn't a new ice age. The planet is still warming overall. What we're seeing is increased instability. A climate roller coaster with more wild dips and twists. Extreme cold snaps are one of those wild dips. The big picture: a warmer world means more weather extremes, not just more heat. The stable patterns we relied on are becoming less predictable. Understanding this science is the first step to adapting and making smart choices for the future. As you bundle up this winter, remember, everything is connected, from Arctic ice to your front door. Share your wild winter stories in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going.